and welcome to yet another exciting episode on the On Your Image podcast. My name is Coletta Ndlovu and I'm your host on this show. Remember, the rules are simple on this show. You let your hair down, you relax, and we just talk. But before we dive into today's topic, I would like to ask you that you share with as many people as you know. Spread the word far and wide so that we get to all just sit around a dinner table, sit around a home table. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. These are real life stories, real life issues that a lot of people are actually going through. But like I always say, the platforms have just never been available for people to actually just have conversations. So I've created this space, which is a safe space to have communications, to have conversations around issues that we are tackling every single day as families, as communities, as people, just as a mom, as a dad, as a brother, as a sister. I know people go through stuff every other day, and sometimes all you need is a listening ear. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about redeeming your inner child. This is a series that we intend to run for as long as we need to, because I know a lot of people have gone through so much in their childhood. Things that sometimes you cannot share with anybody else. Sometimes things that are just too graphic, and sometimes it's just too hurtful. It's too painful to even confront. I'm hoping by the end of this series, we will have a couple of people that have managed to confront their past so that they can move on to their next phases of their lives. So, as we get into this topic, personally, this is not something that is far-fetched because I've lived the experience of having a childhood robbed from you. It's a childhood that when I look back and think of my own personal life, I just ask myself, how on earth did we do it? So I'll start by giving you a story, just a background so that you know I'm not just pulling strings from nowhere. I'm talking about my own personal journey. And I'm really hoping that this personal journey can encourage somebody to say you can always rise up from wherever you are. It doesn't matter what your past is like. It doesn't matter where you're coming from or what's happened in your life. What matters is where you're going and how you want to finish the race. So, going back to my personal story, I went through a very interesting childhood. When I think of it now, of course I can smile because, I know that I've conquered it and I've gone through it and I am thriving, I'm healing, I'm learning, and I'm growing from it. But I don't think it was the same. I'll tell you why. So, as I've mentioned in my previous blogs and previous podcasts and all that, I went through a phase where I was violated by my own father. And it was not the easiest of things to have to go through because this is somebody that, is supposed to be a safe space. This is someone where you look up to and they are basically your world. Now, when they violate that boundary and they violate that space, it leaves you hopeless. It leaves you thinking, is there any future? Is there any reason for me to even leave? And in those days, to probably fast track the story, my parents divorced when I was about maybe around 9, 10. And when they did, that's when obviously the violations started taking place. And, my mother had gone. And back in those days, we didn't have any form of communication. So here's a young lady, a young girl at that stage, who is confused, hurt, broken. Their mother has literally just been snatched away from them. And they are in a period where, they're grieving their mom, not because she's dead, but they're separated. There is no form of communication whatsoever. I do remember a couple of times my mom trying to come back because we lived in a campsite. And my dad, was a chef in that campsite. And here's a girl hoping that, mom can just come back one time and, we can be a family together again. And unfortunately, this didn't happen. The few times that she attempted to come back, she was chased like a dog and sent away. And because my father was well known within the camp, she wouldn't, I mean, literally, I think I wouldn't call them guards, but because they were entry points, they had told them, the police people that used to be at the guarding entrance doors, gates, they were told not to ever let her in. And we would then hear, I remember this one time a neighbor came to me and she said, "Oh, we saw your mom. She said we must pass her love to you." And that just broke me, because I'm thinking, why is this man doing this? But anyway, they had their issues. I don't know what happened. They had their fallout. And it was just sad, because at the end of the day, where two adults have had a misunderstanding, broken down the relationship, the children suffer. And, as we go along the weeks, I'm actually going to talk about that, the effect, of people separating and, the divorce and all that, because I lived it. I know exactly what it does to another human being. And we went through a phase. So my mom ended up taking my other two siblings. And then eventually, I think my dad fought and he made sure he had custody of all of us. Well, I don't know whether it was custody or he just forced, to get us to live with him. And in that moment, that's when he started his shenanigans, and he started violating me, and at some point, because I've always been a very intelligent child in school, and because also my dad my dad used to threaten us, if we came back with any other number, because we used to get placed in numbers in school according to how well you do in class. If you came back home with any other number except for one, it was a nightmare. You'd actually get a whooping for it, because you'd ask you, "So the one who took number two, what's so special about them?" Anyway, so because I'd always been top of the class, my teachers obviously noticed when things were no longer the same. And because not necessarily did I underperform, because I was also scared that if I don't give the numbers, I'll still get into trouble at home. So I used to try and keep that up. But I mean, you're only human. And I suppose my numbers started dropping. So the teachers started wanting to dig more and find out what was happening, until eventually I opened up to my one of my teachers. And I let her know what was happening. Immediately, she contacted police. And obviously, my dad was then, incarcerated. He was taken, and, he went to jail. Now, in the campsite where we lived in, it's a state house, by the way. So obviously, that house is being owned by the state. And you can't exactly live there if you're no longer working there, or the main worker, or the main applicant, the main person is no longer there. In this case, which was my dad. So now he's been taken away, and I actually, by law, what should have happened is social services or social workers should have been assigned to us, take us away, and maybe get placed into a home or whatever. That didn't happen. Only God knows why. But I think over the years, I then got to realize why it happened like that. Because God had orchestrated a certain way that he wanted our life to go. And had it not happened that way, probably we would have missed the mark. And I'll tell you, in the coming episodes why I say that. But they took him away. And so here I am, probably around 10, 11. And my brother there, I think he was also, because my brother and I are just a year apart. And so he was, just not too far off from there. And we had a young sister, so it was just the three of us. 3 kids left alone in a house. We stayed there for months. For months, nobody. And to make matters worse, our house was right at the end, which was right next to the offices. They used to call them, I've forgotten, but they were at the main offices where they used to do the administration for the camp, the entire camp. So in this camp, we're talking maybe 200 or 300 units of homes where police officers would live there with their children, So it's bordered obviously by fences and all that. It's guarded. And obviously, the office knows who's moved out of this house, who's now staying there. There's new police officers that need to come in. They need to move into the house. Funny enough, we stayed there for months. And all I remember is, because my dad was very gifted in agriculture. So he used to have a patch of land where he used to plant his things. And I mean, everything you can think of, sugarcane. He had carrots, tomatoes. He had all sorts of things that he used to plant there. So that's how obviously he used to supplement his income, I would believe. And so the ladies in the campsite, and even some outside the campsite, would actually come and hoard the vegetables because they would then go and sell at the market. So now, at the back of my head, I'm thinking, how am I going to survive? Now, before we even get to that part, after my dad was taken away, his sister, he had a sister that lived in a town not so far away. It's actually, it was a location not too far away from where we lived. She came, and I remember her saying to me, wakuraka, so dakuna tuchaita say. Basically what she meant is, so now you consider yourself an adult because you've reported your dad. You consider yourself an adult. We want to see how you're going to survive. You know, they took almost every piece of furniture you can think of and left the basics for us. You know, to just, I don't know. I really don't know what her reasoning was behind that. But anyway, people are people. This is his sister, blood sister, you know. She had come with her husband and a truck people, and they took whatever, they left us there. We just had stuff to survive. So I was like, okay, fine. So that means purely we are on our own. What do I do then? I'm like, okay. So I suppose that's where my entrepreneurship came from, because from that early age, I was already thinking, what can I do? What can I sell? You know, to obviously bring income. I remember, okay, dad used to do this. So we'll obviously continue that part. And yeah, so we continued selling. When we'd come back from school, my brother would push the wheelbarrow and we would go and sell. And then during the week, I think 3 or so times, I don't really remember the finer details, but I remember a couple of times getting up. So I remember the one of the ladies stayed not too far away from us. I went to her and I said to her, Auntie, I need to find a way to obviously sell and, you know, make money because we need money. And, you know, she told me, okay, we go and sell things. Where we sell things is at the market. And at the market, we have to be there early. So we're talking getting up as early as 3 a.m., you know. So, and I remember thinking to myself, it was a no-brainer because I've always had that kind of attitude in me to say, I can do it. Anything, literally. I think of something and I'm like, I can do it. It doesn't have to be. I really don't think too much about stuff. And yeah, so she told me, she's like, yeah, but you know, because you're young, I'm not sure if that's even legal and all that. But if you're caught, because anyway, we sell at the market, if you're caught, because sometimes the police people come and they beat people down because you're not allowed to sell. It's not an official, you know, selling place or an official market. So if you're caught, you need to be able to run. If you're caught, then I don't know you, you don't know me. I was like, don't worry, I'll take care of myself. We went there, sold, and I remember the very first time we sold, I woke up, on time, on the dot, I was there at her house, 3 a.m. We left, we walked probably 5 miles, if not more. I don't remember. I just remember we had to go to the main road, which was quite far a distance from our houses where we lived. And we had to walk the distance. So I walked with a 50 kg, by the way, because we used to, you know, sell chomolia, rojo, I don't know, kale. Yeah, we used to sell that. And so I loaded up my 50 kg sack and put all that kale in there, took it on my head, we went. And I remember I probably had my mind taken or bought over in no time. Some of the ladies still had to sell their stuff. And I remember 1 or 2 ladies actually went back, because there was about 5 of us. 1 or 2 ladies actually went back with a bit of, you know, stock, because it was just not bought. Or some of them ended up selling at a small. So I don't know whether it was because people just liked me or they just felt sorry for me to say, this little girl, what is she doing? Mind you, I'm a very short person. So I've always, you know, I've never really looked my age. And, you know, people have always thought, hey, this little baby, this little, you know, so they probably bought because of that. Well, I don't know. It was just the grace of God, you know, that put me in that position. So they bought. And yeah, I remember I came back and I even, because I needed to rush back home so that I'm ready for school and get my siblings ready for school, rushed back home. And I was very excited because in my head, I'm like, so dad is selling to these people for this much, and yet I can get so much if I do it myself. So for me, it was a no-brainer. You know, would get up, I had my alarm clock that we used to have, and, you know, so I did it a couple of days during the week until obviously I think I just started getting tired. So now in school, sometimes I would be sleeping and the teacher wasn't happy. So I needed to sort of make sure she doesn't know that we're staying by ourselves. So we try to keep it under wraps as much as we can, because my worry was if somebody knows, or if I tell somebody, they're going to take us away and separate us. And I didn't want that. We stayed in that house for a couple of months. Nobody found us. Nobody knew what was happening. And we carried on with our lives. The cycle went on and on, where, you go sell, you go to school, and we were fine. We were okay. And then I remember as we were coming close to the end of the school term, I started thinking to myself, now when schools close, what are we going to do? How are we going to, because I think the following month, obviously when schools open, there's school fees and all sorts of things that are needed at that stage. And so I'm coming from the market. It was on a Sunday, and I passed through Word of Life, the church, and I see this young man. In fact, he stops me and he says, "Young lady, are you okay?" And, he started talking to me. Mind you, at that stage, I did not want to hear, see, or anything about a man, because obviously I've got my own wounds, dealing with male figures and all that. And I think I must have been very rude to him. I remember asking him, "What do you want from me? If you want to marry me or whatever, I don't want." And that was coming from the fact that I remember just after, this one guy that used to work with my dad had found out that my dad was gone. And he came to me and he says to me, "So what are you guys going to do?" And I say to him, "I don't know, we'll figure it out." And he says, "Well, are your relatives coming? Is someone going to come for you guys?" I said, "I don't know." And then he says, "Oh, but you know what? I've got a proposal for you. So how about you become my second wife?" And I said, "Are you mad? No, it's not going to happen, And he says, "Oh, well, we'll see how you're going to survive then," and all that. And I would have actually, and I think I remember at that stage, I was actually very scared, because I was worrying that he might out us, that, there's kids living in this home. So obviously then they'll find us. But, well, for whatever reason, he just never did it. He just let me be, and he carried on with his life. But that was the norm in that camp, that, young ladies at a very young age, they get married. I mean, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13, you'd get married, and you're not getting married to your peers or, somebody your age. No, it's elderly men. And yeah, as sick as that sounds, that used to actually happen. Now that I think of it, it's actually, it's something else. But so obviously now, I'm talking to this man, and he says to me, "No, what's going on? You look distressed and all that. What's happening?" Then I just started opening up to him, because at that stage, I think I was just scared, terrified, and thinking, what's going to happen to us? You've got so many questions with no answers. And that's what happened. So I spoke to him, and eventually, immediately, thank goodness for him. And to this day, I always say I'm forever grateful for them, for him and his wife, Dr. Teach, because they've been a pillar of strength in our lives, and they've been present as parents, and they've done their part. Really, I am forever grateful for their love, their support, and pitching in. Mind you, this was just a young couple that had just been married, and them having to get to a point where eventually, they ended up taking us in and tried the adoption process. But it also took, a long time, and all sorts of paperwork. It was just exhausting. And sometimes you just wonder, why the system is like that, because it's supposed to be caring for the children and making sure that, these young people are actually taken care of. I think that's why I'm very passionate about this myself, because I do know there are many young people that are in my shoes right now. They don't know where to go to. They don't know what to do, who to talk to, or where to seek help. So that's why I'm very passionate about this, because I want to help those young people, and I want to help, people that are going through the same, so that they come out of it, and they come out of it strong. So as I've mentioned over the, podcasts and over the episodes, that at the end of the day, I think it's within your best interest to get to a point where you forgive yourself, number one, for what happened, because it's very easy to blame yourself. And it's very easy to think that, it happened to you because you did it, or because you're cursed, or because there's so many explanations that you end up finding an excuse for. And at the end of the day, it's not right. You don't deserve to be treated like that. You do not deserve to be violated. You do not deserve to, to have your youth taken away from you by somebody who's meant to protect you, somebody who's meant to love you, somebody who's meant to stand up for you and be there for you. So yeah, my main goal on this platform, to try and help as many people as I can to talk about it. Just the other day, I don't know whether it's algorithm or whatever, I was on TikTok, I was just trying to obviously post my stuff on TikTok, and I remember I just came across a post where a young lady mentioned, what had happened to her, and the number of people that, came into the comment section and we're talking about, one day I'll hope I'll get the strength to talk about what was done to me. And that just broke me, because I then realized that there is a gap, and there's need for us to create those safe spaces for people to be able to let go of certain pasts and certain things that have broken them, that have stolen their childhood, that have stolen their futures. And it's something that can be addressed as a nation, can be addressed as a community, as families, because I know, especially in our African cultures, a lot of these things, when they happen, nobody wants to confront it. Nobody wants to talk about it. Why? They would rather deal with it internally. But who takes care of the victim? Who takes care of the person that's going through? Because that can be a mental prison for years if not dealt with, And yeah, it's something that I really genuinely believe, if we stick together and if we come together as a community, we can actually work this out and help a lot of young people. So anyway, as I'm saying, as I'm going through these episodes, I'm really hoping that we will get, some people that will be able to come forth and not only open up. It doesn't have to be public. Like I said, I always make sure that I do put my direct email and our links to our website where you can communicate with us, and just to ensure that you still, we still observe your privacy and you are free to have the conversation. Perhaps you just need someone to talk to. You obviously may be in a position where you're not really looking to go back to this person to say, look, you did 1, 2, 3. You don't want to confront anything, and you don't have to if you don't want to do it. All I'm just saying is, I am available. We are available to talk. We are available to listen. We are available to hear, and we are available to assist where we can. So this is a call out to anybody who's been through this phase, anybody who's had, stuff like this happen to them. And I just want you to understand that it's not you. You didn't do anything wrong whatsoever. You didn't deserve it. It happened. We can never excuse what happened to you. But it's high time we find a way forward and we deal with this internal pain. The moment we deal with it, the moment we handle it, then we are getting ourselves out of that pain, out of that disappointment, out of that hurt. And it takes you taking the step. It could have happened 40 years ago. It could have happened 10 years ago, or it just happened, or it is currently happening. You are living in it now. Find someone to talk to. Find someone to speak to. Find someone that can address the issue for you. There's many helplines. There's many organizations that are doing the exact same thing, helping people going through the same stage. Look, like I said, there will always be somebody ready to hear you, somebody who will believe your story. Do not be lied to and told no one is going to listen to you, or if you open your mouth, I will kill you. Gone are the days where people could get away with injustice. Gone are the days where people can just do whatever they like to other people and it's okay. We have a voice. We are finding our voices where we can speak and take control of our lives. So all I'm saying is, if you are going through it right now, or if you've been through it, or you know somebody that is going through it, encourage that person to find somebody to speak to find someone to hear their story. There will be organizations that are actually doing that. We have links in the bio that you can click and go into and find help. All I'm saying is, if you seek the help, you will get the help. But it needs you to stand up and speak up for yourself. Speak up so that you can liberate yourself, you can regain your freedom, you can regain your life, you can regain and take control of your future. So until then, thank you for listening and thank you for watching. I will see you on our next podcast. You have a lovely day.